Ooh, those effing C words. Change and confidence, child. 2 words that are so scary they may as well be curse words. Let's talk about it. On this podcast, we'll share our stories about hardship and starting over, making professional pivots, ending relationships and friendships, and having the confidence to navigate change. I'm Marcia Cork, the Change Coach, and this is Ooh, Those Effing C Words. Hello, MCs. Happy Friday, and welcome back to another episode of Ooh, Those Effing C Words. I am Marcia Cork, and looking back at me right now is a very familiar face and smile. He has one of those faces that always feels like it's just delivering a comforting smile, even during those difficult conversations. It belongs to Dr. Ken, mental health expert and licensed professional clinical counselor to individuals and to families, along with premarital and relationship counseling for couples. Now, you'll recognize that smile from his appearances as the featured marriage counselor and coach on the Bravo TV franchises, Married to Medicine, The Real Housewives of Atlanta, The Real Housewives of Potomac, all the places, right? So we've been talking about grief, the last few episodes. The holiday blues, grieving loss or disappointment during the holiday season. And if soulful Christmas songs were played in your household like they were in mine, then you know the song, What Do the Lonely Do at Christmas Time, right? What do the lonely do, right? So today's conversation is at the intersection of Dr. Ken's specialties in both relationships and grief. Dr. Ken is here to talk to us about what the lonely can do at Christmas time. We're talking grief. We're talking grieving relationships during the holiday season. So welcome to the show, Dr. Ken. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Honor. I don't do many of these things, but however, when you introduced the topic to me, it resonated with me right away because that's really close to my heart.
Yeah.
In the sense that I have journeyed on this whole grief and path over the last 25 years. And this is the time of the year where a lot of people really are experiencing loneliness, grieving, and they're experiencing blue. I actually was one of those at one point from my transition many years ago. And I said to God, if you ever get me through this, I'm going to help as many people as I can to see the brightness and to get out of the valley. And so I've dedicated the last 15 years to just doing that. I do grief empowerment seminars, extensively with people who are grieving. And the reality is all of us are grieving one way or another. We're grieving a relationship, we're grieving a job, we're grieving a marriage, we're grieving an experience. All of us are grieving. And when you say loneliness, some people might say, well, loneliness, that means that, are you talking to single people? No, it has nothing to do with whether you're married or if you're single.
Yes.
In fact, I found out that a good portion of married couples are lonely. But that we can get into that if you like. And so it's not a single thing. It's not a married thing. It's a human nature. It's not a grief thing per se, the passing of a loved one. Yeah. It's a matter of the heart.
Yes.
What do the lonely do?
Yes. And I'm so glad you said that, because one of the questions I was going to ask you is, are we talking about just grieving a relationship, or are we talking about just grief overall in whatever shape that takes? And that's perfect what you're saying, because we're talking about this sense of loss and loneliness, and for some people not even realizing it's grief or what grief is. So let's talk about that. Let's start off with maybe what brings people to you this time of year. I remember you saying this is the busiest time of year for you. What are the trends that you're observing? What brings people to you? And are your patients even aware when they come to you that what they're dealing with is grief?
What brings it to it's the holiday, it's the jingles, it's the trees, it's the song. It's that time of the year that it just touches people's heart. Other times of the year, you might be busy doing other things with your life, school, work, or entrepreneur endeavors. And
Yeah.
the mindset is like you're grinding, but there's something about this time of the year where things start to slow down and it becomes more emotional. And so it gets people start to feel stuff.
Mm.
I know you might say, well, what do most people do when they feel it? I tell you, I know what most people do. They push it down,
Mm-hmm.
and act like it's not there, and then it spills up. That's why you have a lot of arguments and fights around this time of the year.
Explosive. Yeah.
Down,
Yeah.
and then it gets triggered. Or worst case scenario, which is really not the best one, but a lot of us tend to do that. We self-medicate,
Mm.
so
Mm-hmm.
we don't have to feel it. But the reality is, whether or not you self-medicate or push it down, you as a human, you're feeling it. It's just something about this. It puts us in touch with our childhood.
Yeah.
It puts us in touch with just various experiences that we've had. And one
Extreme peaks and valleys. I heard you
yeah,
mention valleys, so they just seem to be more polarized and extreme this time
yeah,
of year. You're experiencing the highs of the highs with the jingles and everything that's going on, this being the most joyful time of year, but then those lows.
in their lows, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And why do I think that people come to me? Because it's uncomfortable
Yeah.
to feel those emotions. It's uncomfortable, whether you be a man or woman or boy. It's uncomfortable, and and because we're living in an era now in which mental health is where people really see the value of mental health.
Yeah.
So people are seeking out help so that they can work through those complicated, and they can be very complicated emotions.
Okay. Okay. So I love that you've given us some background, a little bit about your past that drives the work that you do today. I was telling you earlier, I was going to have you introduce yourself in that way because we know Dr. Ken, the man behind the lens of our favorite reality TV shows. But I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about Dr. Kenneth Ballard, the work that maybe you were doing with UDC or knowing you're an ordained minister, doctor of divinity.
I know a lot of people are entering the mental health field for whatever reason. They think it's lucrative. They think it's the way to go. However, I was born into this thing. I was created to be there for people emotionally and mentally during rough times. I got baptized into it primarily by my mother, who had six biological kids, and even with six biological kids, and raised them, and then decided and had a heart for children. So she took in over 50 foster kids,
Oh
over
my goodness.
foster care children, and she realized there was something really special about her baby boy, and she hired him to be a mentor, to work with the young people as they came in. So here I am getting my allowance and also getting
Mm.
paid as a mentor for the young people. So it kind of ingrained in me, and just seeing the way that she worked with these young people and their families, how hard, how she poured herself out. She later wound up adopting six of them. So it really, really,
Wow.
it just was her life mission. And then friends just gravitated for me. So to me,
Yeah.
throughout elementary school, high school, I just always been that guy that people felt that they can talk to, and it's
Yeah.
something that I love to do. And I do it primarily because I know that there is, that people get stuck in emotions and it can really damage and ruin your life. And then at one point during my journey, here I am just doing that, providing mental health services.
Mm-hmm.
Another call, and that's called into ministry. And then I wound up going to the best seminary in the world, the Samuel D. Proctor School of Theology at Virginia University, the
Okay.
seminary. And what I love that experience because it helped me to really get more in depth theologically what goes on with individuals. So not only did I get the mental health stuff, but then I got the spiritual part, and then I got called
Yeah.
to serve at a local church. I'm almost done. You want to know my background?
No, I want all of it. I want all of it. Thank you.
In Arlington, within the greatest church in the world, Mount Zion Baptist Church, and I served as the family life minister, oversaw 9 ministries, you name it. I did it: the marriage, the men, the women, the senior adults. I did all the premarital, and I did one of the things that I love to do, and I oversaw all the funerals. So there's something I would, just being there with people and being able to help them to feel whatever they're feeling and seeing
Yeah.
God movement in their grief and been helping them get to a brighter place as it would be manifested through a homegrown service. So I just dedicated my life to this.
Yeah. And
And it
so
gives
grief
me
up
a
close and personal. Yeah.
fulfillment
Yeah.
to this. Yes.
And see, that's beautiful. And I thank you for sharing that, because that is what we would never know about you, right? Right. That passion, where that passion comes from, that history, baby boy at the hem of your mother's garment, learning firsthand, right? To shape the work that you do today. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
So again, getting back to this visit being the busiest time of year, for when people come in, do you find that they are coming in because they're dealing with a new loss, or do you find people reliving past loss? Do you find that they haven't adequately grieved loss? What are you finding when they come to you?
I mean, it's a variety. But grief is always usually associated with earlier childhood, early experiences. So grief is complicated. How you experience the breakup of a relationship kind of ties to early experiences that you have. So usually people come in with a current one, but it's usually deeper. We learn
Yeah.
how to deal with
Mhm.
grief based on what we've gone through in our earlier life. So
Yeah.
yeah, usually current. Most of the time it's current. But there are different layers, and if you really want to help a person, then you have to help them. You have to help unravel that so they can get to the real source. What was that main thing in your life or experience in your life that gave you this message on how to deal with it? I'll give you a good example.
Mhm.
I remember when a loved one passed in my family. I had a friend over, and at the time we had a foster child living with us,
Okay.
and she was crying. And the person said to her friend, butted in to the experience and told her, "Stop crying. You're going to mess up your dress." I said,
Mhm.
chill, Bo. You can cry as long as you want to cry. We can get another dress. Just cry as much as you want. It's
Yeah.
okay." But that's the kind of message you would get. So what he was telling her to do was bury these emotions, right?
Right.
Young person, and then she would have grown up that way, and so she had other experience as opposed to being in touch with her emotion. She would have buried them. And I will tell you that when you don't deal with your emotions,
Mhm.
they will come out in another way. And
Yes.
it's really important to deal with. So yes, we learn from our current experience, but it's usually deeper than what we are showing at the moment.
Absolutely. So I was telling you, I do grief recovery support in the grief recovery methodology, and that's one of the six myths that they talk about. One of the things that we are taught very early on in our lives is don't feel bad, don't cry,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or to give people time to grieve alone. Like, yeah, if you're gonna cry, well then, go and be alone and cry. Deal with that on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's these common ways that we have been taught incorrectly to grieve. And
Now,
for the most part, it's
yeah.
grieving alone, and then, like you said, self-medicating or overindulging in activity, distracting yourself.
Right.
None of these things actually have you deal with the grief. They're coping mechanisms. You don't heal, you just learn how to pretend you're okay.
Right. And then, the thing with grief is not always the sadness, it's other complicated emotions. I remember I had a brother that passed away suddenly, and it really hit me to the core. And I was dating someone at the time, and we were at a place in Union Station. What is it? Fat Tuesday? What was that?
Oh,
That's back in the day.
yeah. I'm like,
So
what was it?
anyway, so we're there, right? And I know I was in my angry stage.
Mm.
In my angry stage. I mean, at the point where I remember wanting to smash. I was so mad that I wanted to smash all the windows in the cars on my block, and I did it. I just got up with a bat. That's how mad I was.
Oh, wow. Mhm.
Yeah, but so I did it. I did it in my mind. I mean,
Okay.
that's
Mhm.
how mad I was, and I think that was uncomfortable for her. And so she was just saying, you got to stop being so mad and so angry. And I said, I'm angry, and I'm gonna be as angry as I want to be. And maybe if you dealt with your emotion, you would get
Yes.
screwed up. And so I had to feel it until I was able to really figure it out. And let me tell you, I went to the hospital, and when she passed, I wanted to see every single record. Bring the records to
Mm.
me. I wanted to see every.
Mhm.
They actually brought it to me. I was in New York. They must have thought I was a lunatic, but they engaged me. I was mad. I was mad at all different. So I was even mad at God. But then I realized, then
Yeah.
real source of my anger, which was myself, because I wasn't there at that very moment. And then I was able to let it go. You got to
Of guilt.
emotions
Yeah.
instead, and if you're going to get to a better place. So whatever you're feeling in terms of your grief, it's okay.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I love that you mentioned that feeling of guilt, because that is commonly what people feel, that a sense of guilt that there is something they wish that they could have changed, that they wish that they could have, or the other party could have done differently.
Yes.
Right. And we, through the grief recovery method, help them identify that what they're feeling is not really guilt, it's regret.
Yeah.
So, yes, you have regrets. There are things that you wish you can change. There are things that you wish you could fix. There are things that you wish that you could still experience.
Yeah.
And not just with death, but with all of the different life events that bring on this feeling of grief and loss and stress. Right. You are trying to create an outcome that would be different or
Yeah.
better, right?
Yeah.
Or more of. I use that phrase a lot: different, better, more. So yeah, I understand. And we're going to walk through those today. Some of the things that people tell us
Yeah.
inaccurately about grieving, and you are going to give us some healthy ways for people to navigate, right? Relationships, grief in general. Did you forget about that part? That your expression was like, what? Wait a minute, what are we going to talk about?
I'm just having fun. Enjoy it, Lord.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the word closure, because I think that also can be misleading when we're dealing with grief. This idea that you get to a place of closure. Um, we like to say complete, that you complete the experience or complete the relationship. What do you feel about carrying around this idea of closure with relationships, or, working through incidents, life events?
Life events, whether it's grief or there is, people feel like you have to get to a place where you're at peace with it or it's over. And this is what I've discovered. And some persons may not want to hear, but this is real. This is coming from a mature man.
Okay.
There are some losses, some experiences that you may never get over.
Hmm.
It's part of your journey.
Talk about it.
Feel it in one way or the other.
Yeah.
Asking of a mother or a significant. I remember my first lady. I still feel it today. I can feel her kiss on my mouth today.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking many years ago, and we got separated and never reconnected. She wound up passing away, unfortunately, before I could bring her back home. But I still remember that. So, what a healthy way, and that's what I tell people: you learn to make an adjustment.
Okay.
Make an adjustment in your life. It's like if I cut your arm off, you're gonna always feel it, but you learn to make an adjustment. Oh, it hurts, and then if you make an adjustment, it
Mm-hmm.
bother you anymore. Every now and then you might feel it, but not to the same degree. It's when you ignore it, suppress it,
Mm-hmm.
like it's not there, or psych yourself out, like I need to get over this thing. That's when you cause yourself down. But you can make
Yeah.
adjustments. And there might be some times of the year when you might feel it, but not to the same degree because I don't have to get over it. I give you one in particular. I tell people all the time.
Okay.
The passing of my mother, she is still with me. I can never. There's one word I don't use, and I know it's common to use. You see it all the time. Dead. I don't use that word. Dead.
Okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
death. So I see things as transitional, and so we make life adjustments, whether it be to a job, whether it be to a relationship, or whatever. You might still feel. Why might you not? Why would you feel it? Because it meant something to you.
Right.
Experience of the person. You're just not going to get over that. It's part of your turn. There was a Star Trek. There was an episode in which they were going to give the captain these pills, right? And these pills help you to forget your pain. And he said, "No, I don't want that pill.
Yeah.
I want to remember my pain. It's part of my journey."
Absolutely.
It's all part of my journey. So I feel it, but not necessarily. I don't grieve or experience it the way maybe other people do because I make the adjustment and I keep my mind focused on the moment and moving ahead. But I
Yes.
still
And that's the goal.
emotion.
And that's the goal, to be able to get to a place where some of those memories can bring you comfort and joy rather than the pain. And that's how I, help people identify that you're grieving. Because if you can experience the range of emotions, yes, you want to be able to do that, but not to the point where it's debilitating. So to get to a place where, well, if you identify that you can be having thoughts and you feel very happy, but then immediately there's this drastic change to overwhelm and emotion, then you're grieving. You haven't quite gotten to that place where you've experienced the completion of that relationship or the completion of that event, where you can experience the highs and the lows, the range of emotions within that event, within that relationship, but still be okay and be okay with being okay, right? Because there's also this feeling that I think Psychology Today was calling it, what is it? Um, the term will come back to me, but it's feeling bad about feeling good, right?
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, so when people know that you've experienced some type of trauma or that loss, that you feel bad when people ask you how you're doing and you actually feel kind of good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So working through that as well. So I like that idea of calling it completion, because you have gotten to the point where you could experience the range of emotions and not saying, I've closed this chapter of my life. Like this is over and I've moved on, because you never really move on. You shouldn't convince yourself that
Right.
you've moved on. This is a part of
That's
your
unhealthy.
life, your story
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for that. So let's see. So we've talked about, the guilt associated, trying to actually identify it more as regret, seeing what you can do about some of those regrets in your healing, maybe addressing some of the regret instead of carrying this feeling of guilt. We've talked about trying to not feel guilty about feeling good, right? Not feel bad about feeling good. What are some, do you have a list? Do we have a checklist, something the listeners can actually write down as healthy ways to navigate grief and loss?
Of course, the number one thing you want to do is label your emotion. You want to get in touch with your emotion. Whatever you feel is okay. You want to, and I tell people to download the emotional list so you can get in touch with all the range of emotions. You might be irritated, annoyed, frustrated, angry, sad.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Get in touch and to label the emotion. This is the critical part. So I want you to hear me. I'm talking
Yes.
authority. I like here's a preacher me coming out.
Okay.
This is yes, I do believe in being in touch with your emotion, but more importantly, though,
Mm-hmm.
that you got to examine the narrative, and I think that's
Mm.
so. I feel sad today. Why?
Why? Yeah.
Usually the narrative that messes us up. So if you're feeling something, check out what are you saying in your head. What are you saying in your head? Your narratives will dictate your emotions, and the narrative you might be saying could really be crippling you. So you want to feel it, but why do you feel that? I'll give you a good example. Just
Okay.
say, I'm all alone in this world now. Are you, that of course that's gonna produce lonely feeling.
Right.
Nobody wants me, or my partner gave up on me. I'll never find anybody else. That's your narrative. So that narrative is going to produce these negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes the narrative is not, although grief, as you know, is not based on reality, it's irrational. And that's what,
Mm-hmm.
am I all alone in the world? No, I got a dog that's right here with me. Am I
Mm-hmm.
alone in the world? I got siblings. I have a new partner, and we're formalizing things. I'm not alone in the world. So you really, really got to check your narrative. What are you saying in your head? I'm a proponent of really writing down whatever those thoughts are. I tell people, whatever that prevailing thought, just go and I like nowadays you can just put it on your phone and what is it? I feel lonely. Oh, okay. Next day, I'm in this world by myself. And then you reread it the day, each day you reread what you wrote. And then you can start to see, that's stupid. I'm not alone in this world.
Mm-hmm.
People do love me.
Yeah.
I can manifest some new relationship. So you really want to look at the narrative and put it on. This is really probably the number one thing you could do is to really examine your thoughts. There's some other practical things we can talk about, but if your head is not right,
Mm-hmm.
it don't matter whatever those kind of things that I talk about. If the narrative in your head is erroneous or irrational, all the practical things will not work. So you want to name it. And if you can get with a guy, somebody who just really loves this, I don't know, somebody like Dr. Ken, you want to be able to verbalize those very vulnerable things, because sometimes we ourselves cannot unravel it,
Yeah.
but you need a professional person to help you to look at the narrative.
Yes.
Whatever you're feeling right now, and may feel over the next couple of days and weeks, I want to caution you. I want to urge you to, check out your narrative. What
Okay.
are you saying to yourself?
And it's that homework.
You
Is
know,
it homework? How are they doing this? How are they are they journaling? Is it an
yeah,
exercise that you do, together, and then they continue the work on their own? What shape does that take?
I do believe in journaling, but more recently, I tell people just one prevailing thought. Because
Okay.
sometimes when you unravel, you probably notice that they'll just go on and on and on and on, and they get away from the prevailing thought. So
Yeah.
what the main thought? So as I said, that you want to, if you want to put in, I tell people put it on your phone, because that way it's with you. Just,
Okay.
I feel lonely today. The next day, what's your prevailing thought? And start looking at it. I did it with one person, said, I feel lonely. I feel like no one loves me. Then she went on to say, hey, today, I am somebody. I'm not gonna let people hurt me no more. Then the next day she was like, I deserve better.
Hmm.
Be a new person. Then the next day, I'm not alone. God is on my side. Then it was just remarkable when she came, or because she did this over a period of 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and she was in a wholly different place. She denounced all those other thoughts, and she was empowered because she began
Yeah.
to get the prevailing thoughts that was in her head, and she got to a brighter place. So I would say, to write it down. What is that prevailing thought? And I know that we have over 3,000 thoughts each day. And, they kind of pass through our minds, as I like to tell people.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, there's one that we grab onto.
Mm-hmm.
Prevailing thought that I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
what's
The thing that we obsess over, that one thought that we might keep obsessing over.
Yeah, and get with
Yeah.
somebody like a Dr. Ken, or somebody who is really invested,
Yeah.
and who's really just invested on emotional and mental growth, and is comfortable dealing with complicated emotions like loneliness and grief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm glad that you're mentioning that it is actual work.
Yes.
Right? This journaling, I know, honestly, I'm not one who likes to journal
Yeah.
consistently. I do journal, but I'm terrible at doing it consistently. So I do recognize that when you have to do the work, the
And
journaling is required.
it's
Right.
a lot of men say, now I don't get it so much from women, but a lot of men say it is exhausting. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
You're dealing with these emotions and writing them down, and it is exhausting. Yes, but it's a cleansing that comes from it, and you're not going
absolutely.
to the other side if you don't do it. So that's just exhausting. But as you go through it, there's going to be a revival within inside of you.
Absolutely.
And you're able, it's like a rebirth, and you'll be able to get to a better place. But you got to go through it, but it's not easy. It's
Yeah,
exhausting. It can be
absolutely.
exhausting.
Okay. What's next? So we've gotten to the point where we're actually changing the narrative. What's the next step for us?
Yeah, it's like you have to see yourself is your biggest baby. I know some ministers, other people may not see it that way, but you have to see yourself as your biggest baby, and you have to take care of yourself. One of the methods that I tell people is, of course, whatever you feel is okay.
Hmm.
Narrative though, and then you want to take care of yourself. Uh, I tell people to do this. Like, see, this is your hand, and
Okay.
you're feeling something. We all feel stuff. I don't know. Sometimes it's sadness, it's regret, it's guilt, whatever you're feeling. Be honest with yourself, and then love on yourself. As David would say, encourage yourself. And I like to do this. It's okay, man. I love you. You're my dude.
Hmm.
You're my dude. I love you. I know, man. I know you feeling you missing her today. Oh, you saw her at the mall, or you saw, yeah, you feeling, and you're disconnected. So I got you. It's okay. I love you.
Hmm.
Actually, and it's like you're massaging your heart and you're loving on yourself. So if you're feeling something, you gotta love. I mean, of course, it's beautiful when you have a support system,
Hmm.
girlfriends, boyfriends, fraternity brothers, sorority sisters, family members, whatever. You have a support system, but really nobody gonna be with you all day now. You can
That's
imagine
true.
me
Yeah.
sometimes when you're by yourself, and that's when those emotions tend to emerge, right? Those are the times you're not suppressing or acting. That's when, and you gotta love on yourself. So take your right hand
Okay.
and be in love. Yeah, I love you. I love you. You my dude. You my number one dude.
Yeah.
I love you, man. I love you. And so you want to empower yourself. And there's something you can't love on anybody else, really, if you're not loving on yourself. And then so you really is. I love what David said. You're encouraged. You're gonna make it. You encourage yourself. You're gonna get to the right side. You're gonna get
Okay.
to the right side.
Okay. So good piggyback to that. Forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for what role you may play in this incident, this life event.
Yeah. Again, that goes back to the narrative. What are you telling yourself about the breakup, the experience, the passing? What are you telling yourself? And part of grief, though, is really irrational. And a lot of time it's, people, they blame themselves. But as you write down these thoughts and and you get with a competent person or a trusted friend that may have these skills,
Mm-hmm.
you begin to unravel and realize that thought is not based on reality. Because oftentimes, no matter, things happen in life, things happen in relationships, things happen. We say stuff, we do stuff, things happen in it's all part of the journey. And so you can beat yourself up and say, what if I wouldn't have said that to her, she'd still be with me, or if I wouldn't have done that, then he would still be. You could say that, but that may not necessarily be true, because
Mm-hmm.
happened. It's never about what happened. It's about how we respond to what happened. And I cannot, you cannot, we cannot control how somebody else responds or reacts to something. And oftentimes we take that on, and that gives us that guilt. And so it's the narrative. Things happen in life.
Mm-hmm.
They happen for a reason, and it's usually a lesson there, and we can have some growth. So it's really helping people examine the narrative. So
Yeah.
feeling that way, you really want to, again, I tell you, it will help if you write down these prevailing thoughts and begin to process them as days go on. And usually you'll see, nah, that narrative is not based on reality. And you can rewrite your narrative.
Mm-hmm. And that narrative, it sounds a lot like in the grief recovery method, these significant emotional statements.
Go
So it's
ahead.
actually, yeah, writing down what you feel, what you wish you would have said. When you get in an argument with somebody and there's a lot that you wish you would have said, you can't think of it in that moment, but then you get home and you're like, oh, I should have said this and I should have said that. So, these different experiences that we have with people, and we don't get to voice what we feel. We don't get to lay them out the way we want to. We don't get to, just tell them that thing that needs to be said. That's what that significant emotional statement is. And so to be able to write that down, go ahead. What did you want to
Right,
say
right.
about
Getting excited over here. And
that?
that's, I think that everything happens for a reason. And usually and what I help people to do is examining the narrative. What's the lesson that you learn? Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good thing to have said. And I got the lesson. Because guess what? You're going to have more of these experiences.
Yes.
Happen again. If you really get the lesson, sometimes it's unfortunate. We got to go through the fire to get the lesson. And so
Yeah.
it's beating myself up. What's the lesson? Because I'm going to get it right. I'm growing. I'm committed to grow. And so it's a different way of looking at experiences. That's why I say, again, it's that narrative.
Yeah.
And you want to include what's the lesson and how can I put that lesson into practice in the future? It's all a journey. It's all part of your growth.
I love that. I love that. So what about forgiveness, forgiving the other person? Because we struggle with that. We
Right.
talk about loving on yourself, forgiving yourself, but I know I find, and I did for years, I struggled with the word forgive. I lived as, petty Betty in the petty committee for a long time until I was able to wrap my mind around a better concept for forgiveness
Mhm.
and understanding that it's not about letting the other person know that you've forgiven them, so to speak. and that it's not necessarily grace given to another person, especially if, this comes from childhood trauma and you've been, you know, hurt in a way that a child should not be hurt, and you know that you have to, for your own healing, move on and forgive. It would be very hard to say you forgive someone who's caused you that kind of pain and harm. So I like to explain forgiveness now as, it being a feeling. So we are talking about what it means to give and give up something. Then you are giving up the FOR. The forgive is the feeling of resentment. So that's what you're getting up. You're being able to move beyond carrying and harboring this feeling of resentment for all these years. So for the forgiveness is for yourself, for you to get to a point where you let go of the pain and the feeling of resentment that comes from, this event or these events. And so it isn't, what I try to be clear about is it's not you going back and telling someone you forgive them. It's not you saying, I forgive you if someone comes to you with an apology. That's more about them. That's them feeling a need to be pardoned, grace given to them so that they feel better. That's not what it's about. This is about you and your healing. So for you to move on, you have to give up this feeling of resentment, be able to move from a place. So I know that forgiveness word is tricky in both forgiving yourself and feeling like you have to forgive somebody else. So do you experience that? How do you navigate that conversation with telling people it's time to forgive?
Wow, very good. I like to. It just brought back a recent experience of working with a dynamic man, just one dynamic brother, and his wife, and we spent the last several months really unraveling his life from his childhood to his young adulthood, and into his retirement years, and to things that he had been holding on to.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways holding some level of complicated emotions,
Okay.
and what we did regarding his extended family. And what we did in that time is that we looked at those various things, and he was able to see the bigger picture. For example, my dad didn't do this for me. Well, dad had me when he was 19 years old. He may be 80 now, but
Mm-hmm.
he was 19. And when you begin to unravel, you see the bigger picture. It can help you. And my dad then, he was never there for me, so somebody else had to raise me. Well, he was 21. He was 22.
The child himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he himself, so he didn't have the skills. And so, in other words, it helps you to see the bigger picture. And like in his case, as we unraveled the various experience, he had compassion.
Yes.
And as he had compassion based on the narrative, he was able to let go of the levels of unforgiveness and negative emotions that he was experiencing. And I love what he said, 2 weeks ago. He said it's very complicated, very painful to have gone through this, but I'm glad it did. It gave him peace.
Yes.
So I operate on the premise that everybody, including Dr. Kemp, brings something to the table. We all have something to bring to the table. And so I look at compassion, and that helps me to see the better part of the person.
Yeah.
And to begin, because none of us got it right. None of us. We all make mistakes and say, so that's how I look at the human nature.
Yeah.
Then in terms of, that doesn't mean I reconcile with you now. Now, you're going to get with me. If we're going to reconcile, we got to have some levels of agreement on how we communicate, how we're going to connect, how we're going to behave on there. So there may not, forgiveness doesn't mean that we're going to hang anymore, because you may not be at that place. That means, because I would have learned the lesson,
Mm-hmm.
go to another place. So that may not necessarily be reconciliation, but it can bring peace when I see it from the point everybody brings something, have compassion, and I look at the broader narrative. It can help me to release myself, as my brother did. He was able to release himself and had tremendous peace. What a great experience for him, to have traveled that way with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So what can people expect? I don't know. Did I leave off? Did I interrupt your process? Was there some steps that you wanted to continue with?
Uh, I mean, I wrote down some stuff, although I do think the main one
Mm-hmm.
is, labeling your feelings and looking at your narrative. And if you're feeling something, and if this is a difficult season for you, for whatever reason, and you have traditions that you normally have, whether it be with yourself or your group, your family group,
Mm-hmm.
friendship group, and you don't feel it, it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay to say, "Oh, I don't feel like doing that this year. I don't feel like being around people this year. That's not what I want to do. I rather stay at home, or I rather do something. I rather go out the country, or I want to do. That's not what I want. So if it's okay, whatever you want to do, it's okay. You don't have to do what you did all the other time. Grief. I always like to put it like this: when you're grieving, it's my time.
Mm.
What's
Okay.
so you determine what's best for you and limit your, and assess your limitations. Maybe I go to the family gatherings, but I don't want to stay all night.
Okay.
Go for an hour, or go, or I just drop off food. Limit whatever's going to work for you. Then that's the best thing to do for this season. So if you don't feel up to it, you don't feel up to it. You don't feel up to it because, or if you don't feel up to it, you can be pushing it down.
Yeah.
And you might wind up self-medicating because you're trying to.
Yes. So going to the unhealthy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. So when to recognize that you are doing, some unhealthy coping mechanisms with your grief.
Right, right. And plan ahead. I remember years ago, yeah, I was so busy. I'm the guy that gives Christmas toys out to, out in the community. I'm running around giving bicycles toys. I'm running around doing all this other stuff for people who are grieving. And Christmas Day came. I'm doing all the flowers. And I forgot. I didn't plan nothing for myself.
For yourself.
I forgot. So you want to plan ahead. Just don't let these holidays. What do you want to do on Christmas Eve? What will work for you? What do you want to do on Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day? Plan ahead. Just don't go
Mm-hmm.
through emotions, because I tell you, sometimes when you go through the motion, life will hit you. Hit you, and you wind up going left. So you want to realizing that your heart is tender. You want to plan ahead. New Year's Eve, you could be in a recent breakup. And New Year's Eve is kind of like, a lot of people, that romantic night. And
Mm-hmm.
it might be that time when you're really missing your partner, your boo, or whatever you might call them. And so you might want to plan ahead and maybe really be, if you feel up to it,
Mm-hmm.
with a friend, so that you're not necessarily just falling into that pit. So you just want to plan ahead what will really work for you. And if you get stuck, call, I don't know, I had jokes today. Call the Dr. Ken. Just like it's okay to say, "Yo, I feel lousy." Well, I was out the other week, and a very prominent person said to me, "I was going to call you because I was feeling really, really, really bad."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Bro, call me next time. Like, call me. You ain't got to take that. If you're going through, if you're feeling something,
Yeah.
don't say it. Don't be afraid to say, I need some help with this. I need some
Yes.
to talk." So don't stay in the darkness. Let me tell you though, because if you're grieving, the past on a loved one, relationship, or whatever, you can go into a pit, particularly this time of year. That's why suicide rate is so high. It goes,
Mm-hmm.
but that pit is so deep, and you can get caught up in there. So if you're feeling yourself going down there, and these emotions are difficult. I'm having trouble labeling them. I'm getting some. Don't be afraid. Like, ask somebody for help if you need help.
Yeah.
Just don't stay there by yourself, and take some time to rest. This is something about like pulling back. I know it's a busy time of year, Christmas parties, family gatherings, office parties, all that kind of stuff. But make sure that you take some time to rest, because your heart, your soul is going through a transition.
Yes.
Let's put it that way, right? And so you want to take some time to rest. Rest in that. And I don't just mean sleep, although I'm a proponent of a person. I know
Mm.
Harvey says something different, but I'm sorry, I like 8 hours sleep.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
Rest repairs in every way. When we're
yeah,
sick, when something is broken, rest repairs, rest heals. So
yeah,
yeah.
but check this out. It's just not rest of your body. Sometimes you gotta rest your mind.
Mine. Mm-hmm.
Just allow yourself just to think about nothing. That's why, step out. That's why, it's one woman was telling her husband, he was getting on the kid, why do you watch Housewives show. She said because they're mindless. It gives me a chance to relax my mind. So whatever it is, it might be sports, whatever it is, but you got to let your mind rest. Now you can't be thinking about that person all day long.
Right.
Allow yourself to rest mentally. And whatever thing is stressful for you, like get rid of unnecessary stress. Like what this time of the year, like I know everybody wants a gift. You know, this is what we do every year, and I'm hustling. Well, this year may not be that year where you're gonna participate next. Like give everybody a gift card, give everybody a nice text.
Additional stresses, yes.
But stress kills.
Mm-hmm.
Stress,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that stress is, like eliminate it so you can process, so you can heal from this whatever grief type of grief that you're going through, and acknowledge. It's okay to acknowledge if you're grieving the past of a loved one. It's okay to acknowledge. Like some people put ornaments on trees and might like
Mm-hmm.
do something that symbolizes them. So,
Yeah. Or maybe an activity that they used to do,
yeah,
something that they used to enjoy, or something you used to enjoy together.
right.
If you're able to still do that event.
Yeah, like or I like to cook like my mom. I'll cook her favorite meal. I
Mm.
like that. Well, not her favorite meal, but the meal that I like that she cooked. And so
Okay.
that it just helps me to feel closer to her. So whatever it is, that to acknowledge because that person is they are still with you. Let me just
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in death. I believe in transitions. I believe in to be absent. The body means to be present with the Lord. And where is the Lord? The Lord is with us. And so I feel like my loved ones are always with me.
Yeah.
So I can feel them in the atmosphere. I don't think about somebody being terminated. So acknowledge it. Play that song. And if it produces a tear, that's okay. I'm a little bit because you got to manage those tears after a while too. So I'll be like, all right, you got 10 minutes to cry, bro.
I've heard of that technique before too. For ventilation, with friends, you give yourself a 15-minute window to get it all out, to just
Yeah,
ventilate. Yeah, I've heard of that.
and then it kind of gets less and less. But I'm like, yo, you got 10 minutes, bro. You need to play a song to get it all out. Yeah, I like it. I do it. But it calls management because we got to live too. You got to push you got to, even though I said acknowledge the emotion, you still got to push. As Paul says, you still got to press towards that mark of a high calling. You got to press towards new goals. So you feel it. This is as you go through the grief period. May not necessarily, it's hard to do around the holiday season, but you still can do it. You got to look what's next. And during the holiday season, it's actually a good time because we'll be coming up with New Year's, right? So what else do I want to do? Come up with something. You got to push in the midst of your grief because life is not over just because somebody showed you the curve and you didn't know it was coming.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm glad you say that because we've been talking about death and wanting to, experience these memories that bring you comfort and joy. But sometimes with that relationship, you don't want those memories, right? But there's still the process of experiencing the highs and lows in that relationship, and maybe some lessons. Maybe there's some lessons that come with it that now shape how you live moving forward. Go ahead. What were you going to say about
that? I had a rewind in my head. This whole thing about loneliness. Let's just talk about that. Okay. So whether you're married, single, in relationship, you can experience loneliness. From my perspective, what that comes from is an unwillingness to be vulnerable and share your emotions with somebody. And if you don't allow people, because oftentimes there are people that are willing, you're not allowing people in that space. And so you can feel like you're by yourself because you're not allowing yourself to open up. And I know that we get there sometimes when we're going through a bad experience, we're going through a bad relationship. We get to a point sometimes when we don't want to share, open up because we don't want to be hurt. And so we can see that stuff. And that's what produces your loneliness. So if you're lonely, it might just be because your unwillingness to share your heart with somebody. Now you might say, well, nobody really cares. Well, then manifest it.
Yes.
Manifest. There's somebody out there to really care about my emotions. Start to see it. And I believe when you start to see it that way, then I believe God would then bring people around who would just fit that mold. And then,
Absolutely.
whether you're man or female, be open to sharing your feelings. There's nothing like having an emotional connection with somebody.
Mhm.
Having a place where you feel safe to talk about what you're feeling, and you're not going to be judged, and you're not going to be ridiculed, and not going to talk about you on social media.
Mhm.
A lot of us
Community,
here for
building and finding that sense of community. So
yeah,
whether it's a group of people or whether it's one person, but someone who will allow you to be vulnerable, someone who will listen to you as you construct that narrative, as you walk through those significant emotional statements we were talking about earlier. They have to land, right? So everything that you want to share and release, it has to land somewhere. So it actually is actually part of the technique, the in grief recovery, to make sure you release all of that to someone. You actually have to say it to someone. We talk about this completion letter.
right,
Lots of methodologies use that, writing the letter. But when you share that letter, you have to say it to someone. Very similar to how, most of the legal activities we do in our lives, there has to be the presence of a witness that makes it real.
right.
It's almost like that. Like when you release these emotions, when you go through this process of completion, it has to land on someone. So you have to find someone. You have to find someone who's willing to listen and be vulnerable and allow you to go through that process. So I'm glad you said that. I'm glad that it keeps coming up in the conversation, to find someone, to find this sense of community, to
Okay.
not do
Mhm.
it alone. Go
Yo, so
ahead.
say you can reach out to people, and nowadays you only have to necessarily leave out. You can have meaningful. I know it's a whole nother subject matter, but you can have meaningful conversations even on dating apps. You really can. I know a lot of people who meet and they come to me for pre-marriage. They don't need dating apps. I know you got people
Yeah.
meeting up. Those kind of have some boundaries, that kind of stuff. But you can
Oh
have
yeah.
meaningful conversations that could lead to some really holistic partnerships. So there's no excuse for it. Come on, if you're feeling lonely, come on, push yourself. Listen, Dr. Ken,
Yeah.
and open up your heart, because God doesn't want you to be that way. He wants you to have the abundant life full of joy and peace. So you don't have to be lonely. And then you might say, well, I'm stuck with that. I don't know if I can do that. Then that's when you want to talk to a counselor too.
Yeah.
If you're having trouble just doing that, you want to talk to a counselor. I know our time is moving fast. Can I get the number one thing?
Yes.
Okay, good. The number one thing that I like to tell people who experience loneliness, and all the other ones are valid, uh, is to pray.
Hmm.
It's something that happens when you talk to the one that made you, when you open up and you're expressing your feeling, what you're going through. This is something that happens when you pray. Now, and I don't just mean to just let your stuff out and then get up or sit down or whatever you want, however you might pray. But you want to take some time to hear what God is saying back to
Hmm.
you. And God will speak. God speaks in a small voice, but oftentimes our prayers are short and then we rush it off. But take some time in meditation to hear what God is saying to you. I remember I was going through many, many, many years ago. I was going through a rough time, and then when I prayed, I heard God say, "I love you.
Hmm.
Are you talk? I love you, man. I love you. I'm gonna make a way for you for the rest of your life. You will never be alone. And this is what I need you to do. I got you covered for the rest of your life." I heard that when I prayed. So I'm saying to you, it's the most powerful thing you could do is talk with God about your situation and take time to listen. But I assure you, if you really take the time, God's going to speak as God spoke to me back then. Look at me, many years later.
Hmm.
That's a whole long story I could tell you. But God has provided for me every step of the way. So take some time to pray, and you because you're never alone, because God sits closer than a mother, brother, sister. God is there
Hmm.
with you at all times. So take some time to pray.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And I want to just piggyback that only with the idea that you have to do the work and what we were talking about earlier. And you said finding someone. If you don't
Yeah,
find someone, you're not making an effort. Inaction is an action as well. Like, not, if we're being proactive, you not doing something is in some ways a choice. A
Yeah,
friend of mine just said that on a recent episode. And so I want to remind people of that too. Doing nothing is making a choice to do
definitely.
nothing. So I just want to throw that in as well. You mentioned a great resource earlier. I want to make sure I get the link to that to put in the episode notes. You mentioned the list of emotions, and I
Right.
want to be able to point people to that because people have a hard time explaining how they feel. So
Hey,
I want to
hey,
make sure I include that list, and I want to make sure I include the Holmes Rahe list of life events that cause grief and stress, because people don't really think about the different things that they have going on in their lives that create these feelings of loss and stress and grief. So I want to make sure they have that as well. So I want to make sure people have all the ways to reach out to you. I know you're a busy man, but is there a way for people to get on your calendar? Where can they follow you for resources, tips, and tools? Share all the places people can connect with you,
yeah,
Dr.
you can connect with me on Instagram, Dr. Ken Counseling, or you can go to my website, which is www.drken.life, something like that. Go to my Instagram; it's on right now. Yeah, or you can follow me on Facebook at Dr. Ken. Follow me, but talk to me too, because I'm here for you. There was a guy, right, where I started seeing. He said, "What am I going to get out of this journey? You telling me this broken relationship, we're going to heal it. So now we're doing relationship counseling. The
Okay.
partner agreed. She agreed to come back. He says, what am I going to get out of all this? And I said, I can't guarantee that the two of you are going to get married, bro, but I can guarantee you're going to be a better person. You're going
Yes.
to grow. So if you want to grow,
Yes.
link up with me. I got you covered."
Love it. I love it.
Yeah, thank
Thank you so much, Dr. Ken. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been very joyful. It's been a lot of fun. The best to you. You're doing an awesome job. So the best to your ministry, to your endeavors, to your entrepreneurship.
Thank you.
Then
Thank
there's something very special about you. Something really sparkling comes from your aura, and I know the best. You got some great stuff ahead of you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, I will let you get back to your day. Thank you so much. And I'll be sure to include all of the links to the ways that people can connect with you in the episode notes.
Yeah, I'll send you. I'll send you my handout. Maybe you can include that as well.
Okay.
Things people can do. All right.
Perfect. Wait, we're not done yet. What a dynamic and transformational conversation with Dr. Ken, right? MCs, this is my last episode of 2022. I will be spending the rest of my downtime in December enjoying Christmas movies with my family, getting this last minute shopping done, planning my birthday instead of being at this computer editing these episodes. But I know you've been left in good hands with this conversation with Dr. Ken. But before I go, I have to acknowledge the loss experienced within the dance and entertainment community. DJ Twitch, who took his life just a couple of days ago, that's a loss I know we're all experiencing. Twitch's was another name and face that we saw consistently in our households, being the DJ from The Ellen Show and just being in households across America. And since then, I know I know you've seen just so many posts of people saying things like, check on your strong friends. And that's true. I know that phrase resonates now more than ever. But the reality is, sometimes you just don't know. You just don't know to check on your strong friends, right? How do you know to reach out to check on them? And this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about, having guilt and having regret about not reaching out. And so if you've been in that situation, forgive yourself. The reality is sometimes there's just no way of knowing to reach out and check on your strong friend. But to those of you going through something rough right now, please reach out to someone. Find someone you can trust, just as we were talking about earlier. Even if it's too uncomfortable to explain the depths of your pain, then at least for ideas on how you might handle the uncomfortable situation you're dealing with, or if the source of your pain stems from a situation that you've gotten yourself into, is there someone that you can bounce solutions off of? I will make sure Dr. Ken's contact information is in the episode notes, as I said earlier. My information is always in the episode notes to offer you, the kind of solutions and coaching and support that feels more like a conversation with a friend, right? That feels like community, that isn't clinical. That's what I'm here for. You can reach out to me just like that listener did in episode 29. You remember she was navigating divorce and feeling incredibly emotional. I'm a certified grief support specialist, certified in the grief recovery method. So just say something, please. And MCs, I will be sending love and hugs for the remainder of this holiday season. There's still time to join me for my January 8th event, the Different, Better, More event. You can go to eventbrite.com and search Different, Better, More, or just follow the link in today's episode notes. I will put that link there. Thank you for a great year, MCs. I will see you all sometime in January or February for season 2, but please stay in touch. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. While we're on this hiatus, I can be found at It's Marcia Cork. And subscribe to updates by going to marciacork.com and entering your email address in the sign-up window. Okay? So until next time, MCs, bye-bye.